Hey everyone, welcome back to Behind the Breaks. I'm Alyx Effron, the founder of Collectors MD, and today I want to go all the way back to the beginning, before Collectors MD, before recovery, before I had language for any of this. I want to talk about how I got into collecting, how gambling entered the picture, and how the combination of the two almost destroyed my life. Because for me, this didn't start with what most people think of as gambling. It started with compulsive collecting and impulsive spending with a mindset I didn't recognize at the time, but now know I was laying the groundwork for everything that came after. Collecting has always been kind of baked into my DNA. Growing up in the 90s, if it was hot, popular, or even remotely collectible, I was into it. Pokemon cards, basketball and baseball cards, Beanie Babies, action figures, tech deck skateboards, Pogs, you name it, I collected it. And part of that came from my grandfather. He was a collector too, but his thing was watches. I remember going to my grandparents' house as a kid and just sitting there, completely mesmerized by his collection of luxury timepieces, holding them in my hands, imagining that maybe one day one of them would get passed down to me. Fast forward a bit, and that love of collecting followed me into adulthood, just in different forms. I got into things like memorabilia and sneakers. I've been a massive sports fan my entire life, so anything remotely connected to athletes, moments, or sports culture immediately grabs my attention. And sneakers especially hooked me fast. They sat right at the intersection of sports, fashion, status, and scarcity. At first, it was really harmless. A pair here, a pair there. Then it turned into every single release. I was the guy that was camping out at Foot Locker, Kith, Supreme. I'd be refreshing websites, chasing raffles. If I missed a release at retail, I'd end up paying resale on platforms like StockX or eBay, or even Craigslist, trying to find that local reseller, really whatever it took. Before I knew it, I owned over 500 pairs of sneakers. They were stacked floor to ceiling in these plastic drop front containers, which you could actually see behind me from what's left of my collection. It was honestly insane. It was completely out of hand. But at the time, it was also part of my identity. It was something I was honestly proud of. This was my 20s. I was working in Manhattan. I was doing pretty well on paper. I was partying on the weekends, just really living life in the fast lane. I wasn't just buying sneakers either. I was also buying watches, designer clothes, the whole lifestyle. Here's the problem though. I wasn't making nearly enough money to support that lifestyle, but I told myself a story. I had this sort of YOLO mentality that I just grind, climb the corporate ladder, and eventually wipe all of that debt out with one clean swoop. Of course, that never happened. That belief, the rationalizing, the pushing consequences down the road, the feeling that I'd earned these purchases, that became a pattern. And that same pattern ended up showing up when gambling entered my life. It started with sports betting, nothing too crazy. But in 2019, everything changed when I discovered live blackjack. That's when it stopped being entertainment and started to become compulsion. The speed, the access, the immediacy, the ability to chase losses in real time, it completely hijacked my brain. And slowly, almost quietly, it started bleeding into everything: my marriage, my career, my finances, my mental health, my identity, my ability to be honest with the people closest to me. I could see the damage forming. I knew I was playing with fire, and still I couldn't fully stop. Then came April of 2023. That's the moment where denial finally collapsed. My wife was away on a trip, and over the course of 2 days, I lost more money than I ever had gambling in a 48-hour window. I was completely broken. That weekend, I made my first real move to create distance from the damage. On April 19th, I self-excluded from gambling apps for the first time. Shortly thereafter, I entered treatment at a local facility here in New Jersey called Right Choice Recovery. I was there from April 2023 through February of 2024, and I don't say this lightly, it helped keep me alive. It gave me structure, support, a place to stop pretending I could outthink this on my own. But here's what I learned about myself along the way. When I removed gambling, I didn't remove the obsession, I just redirected it. Now, during the pandemic in 2020, I was reintroduced to the sports card hobby, and it hit every single familiar button: the chase, the thrill, the rarity, the community, the dopamine, that feeling that when you hit big, you somehow earned it. And breaks especially, they felt like the perfect disguise. It looked like collecting, but it functioned like gambling. So during periods I wasn't gambling, I poured an enormous amount of time, energy, and money into cards and breaks. From 2020 through 2024, I spent an absolutely absurd amount of money. My net loss was astronomical, and it compounded debt I'd already been carrying since my 20s. That loss, combined with everything else, became a major reason I ultimately had to file for bankruptcy. I stayed clean from gambling until August of 2024 when I relapsed. And this part matters. It wasn't some dramatic screw it moment. It was quiet, subtle, a moment of weakness. A gambling app that I used to frequent targeted me with marketing that knew exactly which buttons to press. I ended up going back and I went up and down a few $1,000s over the span of a couple weeks, and I could feel the cycle trying to grab hold again. Eventually, I made a decision that I wish I had made sooner. I self excluded for the maximum of 5 years. Not because I felt strong, but because I finally accepted that my best chance at staying alive required real guardrails, not just willpower. Eventually, all of this pain had to become something else because carrying it alone was absolutely killing me. That's what led me to Collectors MD. I started Collectors MD almost a year ago in March of 2025 after realizing how many people just like me didn't have the language for what they were experiencing. They thought they were just bad with money or too into the hobby. What I saw and lived was a dopamine economy wrapped in nostalgia, a system built on chase, urgency, and compulsion with almost zero guardrails. Collectors MD became my way of turning experience into support, a peer-led space for people navigating compulsive collecting and gambling adjacent behavior, whether that means learning to collect intentionally or stepping away entirely. Now, I'm in a full circle chapter of my life. My life looks completely different than it did during my worst years, not because I'm cured, but because I'm committed. This is a lifelong commitment. Part of that commitment is this. In addition to my work at Collectors MD, I now work at Right Choice Recovery, Monday and Tuesday nights, helping lead gambling addiction group meetings. To me, that's step 12 of both the GA and Collectors MD recovery guide, paying it forward, turning pain into purpose. So if any part of this resonates with you, here's what I want you to hear. You're not weak, you're not broken, and you're definitely not alone. These systems are engineered to hook people, but recovery is possible, especially when you stop trying to carry it in silence and in isolation.